This is Jackie Robinson Ballpark, formerly known as City Island Ballpark in Daytona Beach, Florida. 70 years ago, the barrier that kept African Americans out of Major League Baseball began to crumble when Jackie Robinson played on this field for the Montreal Royals in a game against the Brooklyn Dodgers. It was March 17, 1946. The process of integrating modern Major League Baseball began here on this field, and it is no coincidence that baseball's great experiment began in Daytona Beach.
The greatest thing that happened with Daytona Beach, in order for Jackie to come here, was the foundation that Mary McLeod Bethune laid. With her connection with the President of the United States and being friendly and cordial with Eleanor Roosevelt and her visiting here, there was a good atmosphere for Jackie Robinson to do. And Branch Rickey was mindful of that. They had done their legwork. They knew that Daytona Beach was the place. Send them here.
We never go in the white neighborhood unless you go into work or you, to some of the big stores downtown or something like that.
McCorry's, Crest, and Woolworth had lunch counters. See, you could go in there and buy a hot dog, but you had to take it outside and stand up and wouldn't sell it to you.
Then they had a place in South Daytona they called Buck's Barn. It was like a restaurant, you know. They sell liquor up front, but we had to go to the back to get what we want. So I've known people walking in the front door, you know, and say, hey, you can't come in here, you got to go in the back. Well, you go around to the back, you know, and they give you something through a cubby hole.
If a white lady was on the sidewalk, you had to get off the sidewalk and let her pass.
I was bellhopping at one of the hotels, and during that time they didn't have air conditioning in the hotels. They would tell you to go up and open up the windows if somebody called in or they had a reservation, and say, go up and open the windows so you can air out the room. But say, one thing, if you want a job here, don't let us catch you looking out the window down there on the beach at those white women.
When I came to Daytona, I had a job working on the Broadwalk across the bridge. But when I first started, when I walked across the bridge, because my job started at 7 o'clock. But then when I first got the job, I was so glad to have the job, so sometimes I would go at 6. And the police department, one day I was over there, and they came and they said, where you going, boy? And I said, I got a job, I'm going to work. And they said, where? And I told him. And he walked with me right on down to the bowling alley, and he stayed right down there until the band came to open the door to make sure I went.
Even though things were segregated, the relationship to me was pretty good between blacks and whites.
Even in voting, when I was raised up since the 30s, the blacks was voting in Daytona, where they couldn't vote in all other areas as close to Sanford and Orlando.
The WAC came to Daytona Beach, and there were a lot of hotels and restaurants that had to accommodate them because there were hundreds and hundreds of them here. By having to serve them in these different restaurants and going in different places that you hadn't been able to go into before, because they weren't particular about trying to keep segregated. If they wanted somebody to do something in that particular hotel or wherever it was, whatever, they just wanted the work done. And they were open, because a lot of them came here from the northern states. They were just a friendly group. That created a good atmosphere. And plus, when they brought all of the wounded veterans here out at Welch Convalescent back of Halifax, when they brought those guys in here, and they were from all over the country and all. So you had a different clientele that you were dealing with. It was a kind of a relaxed among races as far as race was concerned. But we didn't have a problem with much, because we were head and shoulders above every other town in Florida. We were separate but equal to a certain extent.
Daytona was a service town. Most of the black people did service jobs, maids, porters, hotel, and yard men and stuff like that. So it wasn't a whole lot of money around. But we was always taught to make what do with what we had.
The other neighborhoods in Daytona Beach was Midway. That's where 2nd Avenue was. That was the main avenue for the blacks at that time. And the other area of the blacks were Pine Island. That was on Cypress Street during that time, and that was the area where the ballpark was, Kelly Field. It was on the corner of Cypress Street and Keach Street at that time.
Now, when we was already said that our parents worked for different people, when they throwed away their gloves, we brought the gloves home and we patched the glove and we played baseball and we played basketball and we played croquet. We played hockey. It was because of someone else's garbage we found a treasure.
We all had baseball teams in the city of Daytona Beach. We had the guys from Newtown, Pine Haven, Pine Island, the Roosevelt Inn boys, and the 2nd Avenue Gables.
All of the practices that happened here out at Kelly Field mostly.
I lived right at Kelly Field. When they fouled the ball over the grandstand, it landed in my yard.
I used to be at the park every day. They practiced at Kelly Field. Was it the playground? Well, we call it the playground then, but that was part of the playground, Kelly Field. But I was at the park every day. There was always some kind of activities going on out there. I wasn't so much watching the practices, what we was doing, watching them play peppers, what they call peppers, with 3 or 4 men line up against the fence and have a batter out here, batting balls to each one of them, and then they'd make mistakes and knock them over the fence, and that's where us kids was out there to receive them.
Like I say, that's why we used to get the balls when they go over the fence. So we would have enough balls to play ball that winter. We had a 5-team league in the summer after school, and we had to have balls to play with.
It was first a word of mouth. A guy named Jackie Robinson, who was coming here to play with the white guys and play baseball with the white fellas. Just started off like that.
Well, I didn't know when he was coming. I didn't know when Jackie was coming to Daytona. But I knew when he came in with the team. But then, all I was thinking, I don't know about the other kid, I was just thinking it was a black player that was coming, playing with the white group.
Then the Pittsburgh Courier got the story, and they started talking about it. But they didn't, at the beginning, they didn't say Daytona Beach. They just say coming to Florida. And so now we had several cities in Florida that had spring training for the major leagues. So we didn't know where he was going until later on. The first day or so after he was here, it was quite a spread, even on the radio, about there's a colored boy gonna join the team, and so it's just spread like wildfire. I mean, this was a big thing.
I was 16 years old when Jackie came to Daytona in spring training, and I didn't get to know him personally, but as kids, we mingled up around him from watching him practice with his teammates. The stands wasn't that big, and I don't know, I'd say the stand might have been 500 or something in Kelly Field, I'm not sure. But I'd say it would be half full or something like that. It was black and white, it was mixed. It was mixed. Everybody was, I mean, at Kelly Field, it was mixed, but it mostly blacks was the one looking at the practices and whatnot.
I played baseball, and I would be what you call a baseball nut. I wanted to know and watch everything. I didn't talk with Jackie too much about baseball, but I watched every move he made and how he did things. He was one of the smartest baseball players I'd ever seen. He was not only a good athlete, but he had good instinct. It was really something to see him play under the conditions he was playing under and practice under. Because see, when they come out there at first, come out the clubhouse, the managers and the coaches would be in there getting the strategy ready for the day. And they would be hitting pepper and running and taking the exercise and hitting fungos and everything. And the white guys wouldn't let Jackie catch the ball. They would, when it would be supposed to hit to him, they would catch it in front of him, like that. But now, when the managers and stuff was out there, they wouldn't do that. You see what I mean? When they're supposed to throw him the ball, they wouldn't throw it to him. But when the managers and coaches was out there, they would throw it to him. So he was under stress and some strong things to overcome when he was practicing. I mean, everything was geared to not let him succeed.
What stood out was mostly for me, it was amazing to see him practice and train under the conditions that he had to go through. At the same time, I was going through I was an athlete, and I was in high school training for basketball and football, and I really learned a lot watching him because he didn't only have the talent, but he had the compassion and the patience to endure things that was throwed upon him during that time, and that's what inspired me as a young man.
This when he really explained to me that there were a whole lot of things that he had encountered, not only in Daytona, but different places. And of course, we knew, and just the young guys would always talk about Jackie Robinson because he had such an impression. He made such an impression on the young fellas, especially the ones who were aspiring to become baseball players.
When Jackie Robinson was here, they had one phone in the clubhouse, and the guys would be on the phone, and he needed to use a telephone. So my house was right close to the park, so he asked did we have a phone. And I had to go over and ask my mother, could he use the telephone? And he would come to our house and use the telephone. Whenever they had a change in the thing, like they was going out of town and he wasn't going to go or he wasn't going to participate, they had to call the Second Avenue cabs to come pick him up. And he would come to my house and use the telephone. And he'd give my mama a quarter or 50 cents to call the phone. We didn't charge him, but that's what he would do.
When he was in Daytona Beach, he was treated royally among the blacks. He was living in the black community. He was living in the best that the black community had to offer, and that was Dufferin Harris and Joe Harris, who was affectionately known as the black mayor of Daytona. So he was living in comfort while he was here.
Mr. Harris' wife was my English teacher in high school. She was so proud to be able to accommodate him at this time, and naturally she was speaking of his character and how he spoke, but it was always about encouraging the young people that was in their education and encouraging them how important it was in their life to make sure that they be educated at that time.
He said that one of the things that really kept him going is that Branch Rickey, because he had explained to him what it was going to be like and want to know if he was really up to the task. Branch Rickey recruited him. He was very high on him because he was a good ball player. But other than being a good ball player, he had to be a good person who could tolerate a lot of stuff. He had to be the right type of guy.
He was just a special player. During the time, I didn't realize how special he was. Just thought he was just another player that made the big leagues. But as I grew older, it became just real that he was a very special guy.
It was a great participation in him coming and playing, and everybody was excited about it. The main thing about Daytona Beach, the fellas have told you that we was a most liberal town that I know of in Florida. And this particular day, when Jackie Robinson played that game, the main theory was to not have any incidents.
Of stands just for the black people, and white had the section all together.
It was amazing of how many the people were there, the crowd that was there, in the areas that the blacks had to they stand. That was so small, but most of us was standing up.
During that time, the Welch area, the Farmer Wax camp during World War II, was a convalescent hospital for the wounded GIs. So they couldn't sit those wounded soldiers with the wheelchairs and on crutches in those bleachers in the sun where we sat. So they set them up on the mezzanine in the grandstand, right behind home plate. So we, as a little small Alex, we got up and went up in the grandstand and walked past us and the police and everybody and went up there and sat down beside those veterans. But see, this day they wanted it to be a success. Everybody was on the P's and Q's to not have any trouble out of anybody. And that was how we integrated the City Island Ballpark. We went up there and sat down. We didn't have no seat. We sat down on the floor, right by the wheelchairs and the crippled soldiers. Well, they wasn't gonna put them out there in that sun.
The black fans naturally was cheering him along, and we were just so proud of him because he was playing within an integrated game. But the whites, that was amazing about them were that Daytona were for the Dodgers at that time, but they didn't react to Jackie Robinson when he came to the bat. Their reactions were like they were against the Dodgers.
When Jackie came to bat, it seemed like it was more quiet, a little booze, but it wasn't as bad as I was expected it to be.
It was favorable naturally on the black side, but on the white side, it seemed to have been to me the younger fans were the one that was opposing Jackie Robinson when he came to the bat or whenever he went on the field.
The black people cheered every move Jackie Robinson made. You had a few hecklers there, white, that would make statements about Jackie Robinson, say hurtful things, but the average person in the stand would tell them to keep quiet.
I went to bunch of games at City Island, even when Jackie played his first game, but I didn't go in the park. Like I said, I was always interested in getting some of the home runs from outside.
I did not try to follow Jackie Robinson as a role model.
Most of the grown-ups was in the park watching the game, but the kids, like myself, we were outside on trucks and whatnot. We could watch the game, but we also got the home runs or whatever was hit over the fence.
He was inside the City Island playing ball. I was trying to figure out a way to steal a bicycle.
We were standing on top of the truck watching the ball game until a home run or something was hit in our direction. Then we all hit the ground, running after the ball, who I was lucky enough to get it.
I wasn't looking at a ball being hit by a bat.
You could tell when it's coming off over the fence because you can tell the altitude of it and just jump off the truck and be ready for it to hit the ground so you can start running.
And the people was screaming for Jackie Robinson. I was screaming for my new bicycle.
All the kids during the time, we were all youngsters. Youngsters, we all played the game.
He didn't only have the talent, but he had the compassion and the patience to endure things that was thrown upon him during that time, and that's what inspired me as a young man.
He was my hero because I know that if, anybody that have gone through all the stuff that he went through and didn't give up, I admire him so much.
He was the type of person, he had a presence about him. You see, if you didn't even know he was Jackie Robinson, when you looked up and seen him, you would want to know who he was.
The whole atmosphere around Jackie Robinson was unique. In first place, what stands out is the fact that this guy had the patience of Job and the tolerant level of an elephant.
Not as him as being the first black athlete to come into baseball, but how he maintained his character and still exercised his natural ability as one of the best ball players on the field.
But all over the country, everybody was talking about baseball, Jackie Robinson. I mean, this was the thing. Not only did he make an impression on Daytona Beach, but he made an impression on all blacks in America.
Being a four-star athlete from UCLA, track, baseball, basketball, and football, you see what I mean? He was an excellent athlete.
I bet you not 1% of the black community or blacks in America was watching baseball until Jackie Robinson got into it.
Jackie Robinson gave me the thing that I had to endure to be successful, not just in ball playing, but in my entire life.